All right, so I'll call to order the February 10th meeting of the La Habra Heights City Council. Do a quick roll call. Brian?
Here.
Greg? Here. Norm?
Here.
Carol?
Here.
And John is here. All right, we have the privilege tonight of having the Boy Scouts of America, Troop 1814, here to present our colors and lead us in the flag salute. So, whenever you're ready. Audience attention. Troop attention. Advance. Color guard, present colors. Color guard, present colors. Troop salute. All those in uniform, please salute. All those not in uniform, please put your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2. Color guard, prepare to present the color, or color guard prepare to post the colors. Color guard, post colors. Color guard salute. 2. Color guard dismiss. Color guard and audience at ease. Thank you. All right. We have a couple of presentations tonight. First off, thank you, Troop 1814, for leading us in our pledge and for the presentation of colors. Next up, I'd like to bring up, I think, who do we have? Ray? And Gil, okay, for the La Habra Heights Improvement Association and Los Compadres, check presentation to the City of La Habra Heights Fire Department for the purchase of the automated CPR Lucas machine. So, come on up. Chief.
We just wanted to thank the La Habra Heights Improvement Association and the Los Compadres group for their fundraising efforts for an automated CPR Lucas machine. It's a greatly needed tool and will benefit our community greatly. They're here tonight to present a check to the fire department for the amount to cover the cost of it, which they generously raised through their members and donations from the community. I'll hand it over to Gil if you'd like to say a few words.
Thanks. Good evening, everybody. As part of, my name is Gil Taylor from La Habra Heights Improvement Association. I'm the president. This is Ray Fernandez, who is president of Los Compadres. So together, we were able to come together and raise funds for something that we believe is really important, the Lucas CPR machine. And on behalf of La Habra Heights Improvement Association and the members, along with the help of the Los Compadres, Chief, we would like to present you with a check for the amount of $32,000 and change, and we want to thank you for helping us out. We want to support all our people here, as well as the fire department helping us. So thank you very much. And maybe you could share what the Lucas machine is, just really quick. Of course.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Gil, Ray Fernandez Jr., Ray Fernandez. Essentially, this started off as a personal goal of mine to bring the Lucas automated CPR device to the city of La Habra Heights. We were one of the few fire departments in Southern California really the state, from my understanding, that did not have this device. So it started off as a goal after a simple conversation with Mr. Taylor, followed up by a committee meeting with the La Habra Heights Improvement Association, as well as the Los Compadres. Took a goal and turned it into a tangible resource that is going to benefit this city, the residents, and the department for years to come. So thank you so much.
I guess I will. For anybody that doesn't know, Los Compadres is a men's club that consists of La Habra Heights residents, and we give away scholarships to local high school students every year. So it'll be coming up soon in the La Habra Heights Improvement Association, the magazine Heights Life, with an announcement on how to apply. It's any high school seniors, no matter what school you go to, as long as you live in La Habra Heights. We usually give away anywhere from $500 to $1,000 scholarship, and we present it to you at Hacienda Golf Club in June. June. So that's what we're all about, and we're very happy to pull our funds together. Is it May? I'm sorry, May. And we're got all our guys to contribute. And when Gil came to us with this idea, we all knew it was something that Heights residents could absolutely use. So thanks again.
Yeah, and I'll just take a minute to thank Chief Jorgensen, for driving this, and also for, since I was elected 2 years ago, the significant improvement in our paramedic program capability, and this is just another step in really driving improvements in that program. So next up, I'd like to call up Diego Arballo. So, Diego, congratulations. I think this is your Eagle Scout project, correct?
Yes, it is.
So I know you've got your device here. I don't know if you want to call up some of your compadres there to help demonstrate this, but I thought a quick demonstration was worthwhile to show you what his Eagle Stack project was. It's also very, I think, timely in that we're expecting some of the most significant rainfall of the year. So why don't you have your folks come up and do a quick demonstration, and I'll present you with our certificate here.
Of course. Michael, Zad, if you guys can please come up. There you go. Thank you. So you guys can just bring it right in front. So, hello. Yes, this is my Eagle project. It is a sandbag filling station for the Park of La Habra Heights. In the very top, on top of these bags, I have engraved some instructions on how to actually use the project, but I'm going to demonstrate it for you guys just in case. No sand, hopefully. So first you have to turn the actual machine or contraption over. Once you have it flipped over, you get the bags, and you put the bags right over the holes. You then want to tie the sandbags onto the pipes so that the bags are not loose and that the sand will actually fit in pretty well. Okay, after that, you want to flip the machine back over onto the right side, so that when you have your shovel and all the sand, you can actually scoop up the sand and fill the pipes with the sand into the bag, so all the sand kind of fills it into the holes right here. After a while, and all the sand is up to the top, you want to lift the machine up a little bit and just kind of bring the bags a little bit down so that all the sand could kind of fill up at the bottom. And then once you're done, you lifted the machine up a little bit. You guys can do that. Lift the machine up, and then hopefully the bags will slide down like this after you untie them and all that. And then once you're done, you tie the bags right back up, and then you have your bag full of sand like that.
You guys can put it back. So if I understand correctly, there's 2 of these at the park right now?
3 of them. Oh yeah, there's 2 right now. This will be the 3rd one.
Third. So for all the residents that might be watching this later on, there's fresh sand at the park. There's you need to come here to get the sandbags. So the sandbags are out in front of City Hall. Diego, thank you so much for making it easier for our residents to be able to fill their sandbags. And with that, I'll hand you this certificate of recognition. It's presented to Diego Arballo from the City of La Habra Heights for your great invention there and your dedication to the residents of La Habra Heights. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The family want to come take a photo?
All right. So thank you to the Boy Scouts and Los Compadres and also the La Habra Heights Improvement Association. All right, I'll move on to public comments. I've got just one speaker card. If anyone else would like to make a comment tonight about items on the agenda or not, feel free to bring up a card. The first card I have is from Ray Fernandez. Ray Sr.
Good evening, council members and staff, mayor. My name is Ray Fernandez. I live on Sharpless Drive. I've been a longtime resident of this fine city, and I'm just here to support item number 23, which is for you to adopt resolution number 2025-08, declaring that in addition to weeds, rubbish, refuse, or other non-combustible materials, dirt/debris runoff from private property upon public roadways in front of properties are public nuisance. And, to me, one of the biggest thing I fear in this city is a wildfire. There for the grace of God, this could have been us instead of Pacific Palisades or Altadena or the other cities. And I want to praise the council for, looks like you're finally going to take this issue seriously. And I'm a member of the Code Enforcement Committee, and our brush clearance code enforcement officer, Mr. Ryan Jorgensen, who's right there, he urged the city to take a zero tolerance policy on this issue. And I want to ask you to take that approach. It's high time we stop being Mr. Nice Guy. Everybody in this city knows what the brush clearance requirements are. I mean, we get a notice every year, right? So if my neighbor is not considerate and lets his weeds grow to where it becomes a fire hazard, I don't think we should have any mercy on him. I think the city should take a hard stance, give them a notice, maybe post the property and give them 15 days to get their weed abatement done. So anyway, that's pretty much it. Please take this issue seriously. I almost had my fire insurance canceled, And I spent about $3,000 in 2 weeks of my own money with another person clearing my neighbor's property so my insurance wouldn't be canceled. I shouldn't have to do that. So anyway, thank you for consideration, and I urge you to approve this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? We can fill one out for you. Come, we know who you are.
I'm just going to speak really quick. I want to add to what Ray said and also encourage the city to make sure that their property is clear.
Maybe just for the recording, if you could just say who you are.
My name is Pam McVicker, and I'm a resident of La Habra Heights. I'm also serve on the Water Board. I'm speaking as an individual tonight and not as a representative of the Water Board. And I just want to encourage this. I've noticed that a lot of the city properties also don't have their brush clearance done, and so I want to make sure that the city takes care of that too. Especially on the Hill Hydrant, which I know is done right now, but we need to keep it that way. Thank you.
That was a heck of a try. Didn't have to be fixed.
Any others? All right. Any committee members have comments? Council comments? Anyone? All right. I apologize. I was unable to make the last council meeting. I think most people know that I work for one of the utilities here in Southern California, and I was tied up on our fire response, and bring with me today quite a bit from that experience. And as you can see, today's agenda is pretty focused on wildfire and the things that we can control as a city around protecting ourselves from that threat. So we'll be focusing on that tonight, along with, I can, tell you it'll be the focus for the next foreseeable future, given what we've seen happen across Southern California. So with that, unless there's any other comments, I'll move into the administrative reports. So, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just tonight, I want to just continue your comments that we are expecting some rain this week, and more than we have experienced lately with the rain. We've had a fairly quiet rain season, but we will definitely be seeing some rain. So it's a great time now when it's still nice out to get out and check your gutters and drains and other areas of your property, make sure they're clean and clear. Staff has been out cleaning drains. We've had a couple of contractors that have gone out to clean larger drains after that first little flush of rain that we had about a week and a half ago. That usually will kind of break loose the initial bunch of leaves and things, so it's a good time to go back and recheck after that little bit of rain we had, getting ready for the rain that's coming up.
And Rafferty, might I add to that comment, look at what the last rains did to your property. If there was debris coming off of your property from the last, what I'll call, light rain that we had, look at that and try to get whatever's cleaned up that was running off of your property, and ensure that if you have drains that flow from your property, that you're looking at those and making sure that they're clean. City Attorney's report.
No report.
The Community Development report.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. So this month, we issued 10 building permits. There was 5 code enforcement complaints that were, for January. 5 code enforcement complaints that came in. We closed 1 code enforcement case. And staff issued 3 stop work orders, and 2 unpermitted construction cases were closed. There were 4 development applications submitted, and 2 projects were reviewed. If you have any questions, happy to answer them for you.
Any questions? All right, Fire Chief.
City Council, I've got good news. Our incidents for the month have remained constant around 60. This month it was 59. We had a big changeover in our administration after December. As many of you know, Al Alcalde retired, and he was replaced by Chief Jorgensen. Chief Jorgensen will be running the BC program indefinitely at this point, so welcome aboard to Ryan. And then also, I thought it was important that we all, and the people that are here, know that we did take delivery of our fire engine, finally, after a little over a year with the Senator Archuleta money. There's a little blurb here I'd like to read real quickly to all of us, but to me specifically. Dear Chief Bruckheiser, on behalf of the employees of Pierce Manufacturing, I'd like to thank the La Habra Heights Fire Department for your recent purchase. Everyone at Pierce is committed to providing you and your firefighters with the finest and safest apparatus available. From the engineers who designed it to the skilled craftspeople who built it, please extend our sincere thanks to everyone who was involved in your purchase. We are extremely proud of the apparatus we built for your department, and we sincerely hope you are too. So, good job, everybody, for finally getting this thing here. I'm glad I was able to see it actually come to fruition. End of report, sir.
All right, thank you. Sheriff's report.
Good evening, Council. Last month we had 1 grand theft, 4 petty thefts, no burglaries, 2 hit and runs, 2 traffic accidents with non-injuries, 1 traffic accident with injuries, and 1 vandalism that occurred next door. It's right now under investigation. We got video of 4 individuals skateboarding, committing some vandalism. It's a family vandalism that we're under investigation right now. That's it.
So one thing that's of interest that maybe you can add to your report for at least for me each month, I'd like to know how many overweight vehicle citations are being issued in the city. I know you're very aggressive in that spot, but I think it is important because I've noticed that the road that we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars fixing already has a pothole in it. So the section of Hacienda that got paved already has a massive pothole that's formed, and I've got to believe that it's due to the numerous semi-trucks that I see going over that hill.
Yeah, we average I average about 5 sites a day. Amongst all my other duties, traveling back and forth, monitoring traffic, I come across 5 trucks a day that I'm able to stop and cite. On weekends, I'm not certain who will be here on weekends, but I try to make as many stops as possible, especially the tractor trailers. Those are very dangerous because as I'm following them, they're usually going over the double yellow line, which adds another infraction to the site. They're just way too big, way too heavy and way too big. But we average 5 a day.
That's impressive, thank you, because, I mean, you're not just a traffic deputy, right? You have to respond to calls, you have to do
burglaries,
reports.
everything else.
No, that's impressive, thank you.
John?
Yes.
I know, I'm not sure our deputy recommended, but there was talk about putting a sign up, a bigger sign warning them further out. Should we agendize that, or?
We talked about southbound traffic starting in Colima. I've counted 3 before they get into the single lane. But they're visible, they're clear and visible, and they're just not as big as the ones going northbound on Hacienda. I've counted 11 notices or signs from Whittier all the way down to Canada Sombre, and only 6 going southbound. So one big sign just before it gets to the single lane would be a good idea.
So maybe we can reach out to both La Habra and LA County about, I know the signs are fairly small, but I would think that a professional truck driver should be able to see those signs and recognize them. I mean, so they get trained to do. I mean, there's plenty of signage, but, it sounds like folks in Hacienda Heights have been complaining to their supervisor about the truck traffic in addition to our own residents. So it might be easier to get LA County to put, some better signage on their side of Hacienda, because it doesn't do us any good to put it in the city because they're already
Yeah,
on
they're already,
Hacienda.
once they're in that single lane, like I explained to the other truck drivers, once they're in that single lane, it's almost impossible, especially for the tractor trailers, to turn around. And their excuse was, or is, most of the time, is that they're following their GPA, or GPS.
Yep.
And Jeep tractor trailers, commercial licenses, truck drivers, they have an app for their GPS. That
Yep.
lets them know not to go this way. But a lot of the other non-commercial drivers, they drive the big box trucks, aren't aware of that.
And then I think we also, sometime this year, Rafferty, we should put on our list of things to do. It's working on a municipal code so that some of that revenue can help repair the damage that's being done right now. I don't think we see a lot of money from the citations that our deputy, that we're paying our deputy to write. So if we're going to have him, if we're going to pay him to write the citations, we should try to come up with a mechanism to get that funding to come back to repair the roads. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to make a executive decision here. I hope the city attorney's not too upset because I don't want to make this person wait all the way till the end for items not on the
Yeah, you have control of the agenda. That's cool.
Okay. So I'm just going to pause here. I got a card from Deanna Garcia Taylor that would like to talk about an item that's not on the agenda. So. Yeah, that's all right.
Just really
we
quick,
roll with it.
I wanted to let the board know that, or the council know, that there's a problem in the park and surrounding area in the evenings, typically weekends, but not always. There's somebody, and I'm assuming it's the same person, but I don't know, who's driving extremely erratic. They go into the parking lot of the park. My mom lives directly behind the park. Frequently when we're at her house, you can hear them squealing their wheels, doing donuts. Super, super unsafe. It's just a matter of time before they hurt somebody. So I don't know what can be done, but something needs to be done so that we can stop that individual before they hurt somebody. Just wanted to make you aware. Thank you.
It's under investigation. We got cameras. Well,
And residents have been sending us videos as well, so I know Ms. Vicker was out there and sent a video to staff as well, which nicely showed license plate numbers, which is greatly appreciated as well. There's a few different vehicles.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, let's move to the consent calendar. Anybody want, Greg, I think you wanted some of these pulled. Did you have some of these you wanted pulled? No? Okay. Anybody want any pulled? We good? Take a motion.
Move we approve the items on the consent calendar?
Second.
Call for a vote. Brian?
Yes.
Greg? Norm?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
John's yes. All right, let's move into the public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. This item is related to an accessibility project at the ramp, and our interim assistant city manager, Mr. Robinson, will give us a report.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, this project has been in the works for some time. The city has received CDBG money, Community Development Block Grant money from the federal government for a number of years, but we receive a relatively small allocation of $14,000. It can be used for capital projects such as sidewalks, curb and gutter, those types of things, particularly improvements that assist the handicapped and others with difficulty in walking and so forth. So what we have done here is we've looked earlier at another project in the park that was a walking trail. And the feedback from the city council at that time was that they didn't feel that that was an appropriate project because of the amount of trail that would cover the grassy areas of the park. So we went back to the drawing board and we looked at the 2 existing ramps, or actually staircases in the park from the upper parking lot down to the gymnasium building, and identified the replacement of one of those projects as a suitable project. We checked with the Community Development Department in Los Angeles. They agreed with us, and they are encouraging us to move ahead with a project because we've had some of this money for a number of years, and the clock is sort of ticking on getting a project done. So we're here tonight after the council's direction at the most recent meeting to pursue a design build project. You may recall that we had one bid for doing a design on the project, and the council indicated that that was higher than they wanted to see for this particular type of project, thinking that there is probably a design build formula somewhere on a shelf that we could use for this type of project. What we found was there probably are plans out there to build it. There's not a lot of examples where it's gone through the CDBG process for approval. So we ultimately found a couple of cities that had done something along this line, prepared an agreement using their material as a sample, and we're back here tonight requesting your approval to pursue this, and that would include adopting the resolution that's attached to your staff report, directing staff to pursue this ramp and parking improvement project at the park, and direct staff to prepare a request for proposals for design, build, engineering, and construction services for the project. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm clear. There's no ramp there today. This is the project we were talking about several months ago.
Yes.
And it would be a ramp that would be between the 2 existing stairways that are there north of the gym building, correct?
It would replace the easternmost staircase.
Got it.
Which is in worse shape than the other one.
Right. I just wanted to make sure I knew the scope and the location of the project. Okay. Any questions? Any public comment? Council questions?
I just had a question. There are numerous monetary sums discussed in here from different sources. So this is just to advertise for bids and execute
Yes.
and execute the project? Are we doing the whole project, or we're just putting out to see if we can get some bids?
We will bring back the results of the request for proposals to the council. We showed you the numbers that are available from CDBG pots, if you will, that we can call in. And we also referred to a state grant that we have that's in addition to that, just in case the numbers come in higher than CDBG can handle. We can turn to this with the council's approval to the state grant to fund some portion of it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Motion?
No question. Move to approve resolution.
Second?
Brian?
Yes.
Greg? Yes. Norm?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
John, yes. All right, item 17.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The item before you tonight is a protest hearing for unpaid brush clearance lien costs. As we have heard and talked about, brush clearance here is a year-round program. So the brush clearance and our fire marshal do continue to do inspections and abatements when necessary. There are 2 properties that have been abated by the fire department. Both of the property owners have been given opportunities to pay the invoices for the abatement costs prior to liens being set for them. So far, they have not paid those costs, and so tonight, if council adopts the resolution, the 2 properties that are on the list will receive liens as of today, which will get filed with the county recorder's office. Do you have any questions? I'm happy to answer.
So I know I've asked this before, but on these tables, can we get total liens on the property?
We're working on a way to include that and track it. So as Chief Jorgensen's taken over the brush clearance, him and Dawn, the admin in the department, have been working on a way to get those. The two that are on there are not frequent flyers, so they're not our usual every year ones that we abate. So
okay,
not as many liens on those properties.
All right, I'll open up the public hearing. Any comments on this item? Hearing none, I'll close it. Council comments?
Move to approve resolution 2025-06.
Second.
Call for the vote. Brian?
Yes.
Greg? Yes. Norm?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes?
And John's a yes. All right, item 18.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The item before you tonight is the public hearing for the vacation of La Habra Road within Powder Canyon. At our meeting last month, the City Council had a discussion and adopted a resolution setting a public hearing for tonight related to the vacation of La Habra Road, which runs within Powder Canyon, so from Fullerton Road north to our northern city limit through the middle area of La Habra Road. It is part of a larger agreement that we have with the Puente Hills Habitat Authority related to the Hella hydrant. Is one of the pieces that we agreed to vacate La Habra Road, which is a road, public right-of-way that the city owns in reality on paper, which runs through La Habra Road. As part of that, we are maintaining a 20-foot wide emergency access easement that runs through the length of La Habra Road that would be available to the fire department in case of emergency or anything they need to do. It would be a way for us to continue to use La Habra Road through Powder Canyon on an emergency basis for that aspect of it. To do that, there's a couple of things that need to happen. In the attached resolution for it, there's a couple of meetings that have taken place. The Planning Commission has previously reviewed this request and has also made a recommendation to the City Council adopt the resolution and vacate the road. And it meets all requirements of that. There is a general plan findings related to the vacation of roadways within Powder Canyon, as it is no longer necessary for those ones. This roadway does not serve any homes or residences, so it's not directly affecting the property, anybody's access to their home or property. There were notices that were ran in the newspaper. We also posted notices on the trail, thanks to Grace. Sent her off into the wilderness, and she posted some notices of this meeting along the trail that runs there today, along the roadway for that. And with that tonight, the attached resolution and the plat maps that are associated with it gives you the location of where the roadway runs today, along with the easement area that we would be maintaining as part of that one. And if there's anything I've missed, the city attorney can weigh in, or we can help answer as well.
No, that's, the city manager outlined the process as it has been done. There is a reservation in the vacation that it will not be complete and actually recorded until the whole kit and caboodle of the deal is finalized. So, which is standard with vacations. We're not going to vacate it until we have the easement so referenced and stuff of that nature. So, I'm available for questions.
Okay, I know I sent you an email on this.
Uh-huh.
And I guess what I would like to do, for those of you who don't remember, there's a package, as the council referred to, where there's an overlying document they've entitled Cooperation and Implementation Agreement. And then there's also their easement, where they grant an easement to us for the Hella hydrant. And then there's a third maintenance agreement, so there's this package of documents. And I personally do not think we should, can we not go forward with this vacation at this point? Can we say we're okay with it as long as, but not actually acted on it tonight?
Well, you can do a number of things. As a city council, you can not vacate the road, but you've agreed to vacate the road in a previously already agreed to agreement, so I would not recommend that. 2, you can approve it with the language I put in it that says it won't become effective until all those other agreements are finalized and agreed to by the parties. Or you could continue this public hearing to a date certain and deal with it in the future if you want to try to resolve all those other outstanding issues first. In my conversations with the Habitat Authority, they've basically said they wanted us to do this, and then they'd talk to us to finalize everything. So that's why we did this. So those are your options.
Well, what concerns me is if you look at their, I'm not sure which, the cooperation document or the easement for us, it has language in there I don't think we want to accept. One of them says that all we do is clear the brush on the helihydrant easement, and we want the option of the chief to be able to say if more needs to be cleared than just on the easement. So there's, I can go through them all, I have a list, but seeing that we're going to talk about brush clearance and I assume the habitat later, it seems to me we should say to the habitat, we're okay with this vacation, but let's do the whole package together. That's what I feel.
That's an option. I mean, in my opinion, that's cooked into the resolution before you because we have that language in there. It's in section 4, a condition of vacation, but.
Well, the other choice would be, you reference, you say, let's see, what does it say? Hereby requires only occur after an easement for emergency access with a minimum width of 20 feet is recorded and the agreements. I suppose we could list the various agreements, but I would recommend that we just hold off. It's not that I don't want the vacation and I'm not, but I think it should be a package deal. And you've talked, the other people have talked about talking to the habitat about how much they're going to clear, and it seems like it's the perfect time to do it because it's in this cooperation and implementation agreement they've drafted, which I think needs to be corrected. But that's just, and if there's no harm, why don't we just table this for a while and then meet with them as soon as possible and iron out the other problems.
I wouldn't recommend completely tabling it. If you want to continue it, I would continue it to a date certain. I don't want to send Grace into the wild again. But I mean, whatever the pleasure of the council, to me, it doesn't matter either way. We're going to talk to them to finalize it all pertaining to those issues anyway.
So maybe we could continue it for 60 days? Or
Isn't this though like signing a deed but not recording it? And once we agree with the package, then we turn the deed over to get recorded?
It's like going into escrow, sort of. Yeah.
So I think we're just checking a box off the process. And I think as a council, I don't think there's not one of us that agree. I've seen comments from Greg about concerns about this agreement. I think we give you maybe as part of the motion, we give you very clear instructions that we're not to move forward with recording the easement release until we get aligned with the habitat on what needs to be in the final agreement. But I wouldn't, again, I think the city's gone through some expense of getting us to this point. I would just hate to have to do that again when we can just hold this, give this to the city attorney, put it in a file until we're ready to record it.
I'm in favor of vacating tonight without continuing, but I think the Section 4 language is fine. The only thing I don't think we have is a crew that's going to implement the changes to the document before we record. And so the council, certainly Carol and I both have expressed feelings that language in the document needs to be fixed and we need to be attentive to it as council people. So with the admonition that ever before that document goes to recording, we've had the opportunity as council people to be able to approve language.
So I'll volunteer to take the changes in the document to the habitat because I've got to meet with their chair on other agenda items later on. So I'm happy to present those incremental changes to the habitat.
Oh, I've got a list here, which I'll clean up and give to you, and I think...
But as a council, though, I think we need to, so maybe that, we do the recording, we do this tonight, but as a council, I think we need to align on what those changes are, and I don't think that is agendized for tonight. So I think we'll need to agendize those.
Well, then I'm going to make a motion in section 4 that the word "the agreements" say the cooperation and proposed cooperation and implementation agreement, and the easement granting the helihydrant and the document granting the helihydrant easement to the city, and then the maintenance agreement be inserted instead just the word agreements.
Yeah, you can do that.
All right.
Why don't you make, I've got to open.
That's fine.
Yeah. So why don't I do this? Let's see if there's anyone here that has any public comment on this. So I'll open the public hearing. Any public comment on this?
Mayor, can I just add this as we move forward with the language of the land use agreements between the different entities that are involved? The biggest entity that's involved here is Los Angeles County Air Operations, because they're going to actually use the facility. And when we brought in the Habitat Authority and they flew in the helicopter, it was pretty clear what the fire department needed to utilize the helihydrant. Now, if there could be some language that's in there that we defer, regardless of what the agreements are between who's going to get what, as far as the easement is concerned, that there's some type of wording in there that says, but the fire department needs to be okay with whatever happens to it, or they're not going to use it.
That would be my preference, that for brush clearance and for
just
obstructional clearance, that be defined not by the Habitat or by the city, but by LA County Air Operations.
That's what I would
suggest.
suggest.
Just a clean solution to the brush clearance issue for the helihydrant. All right. Any public comment? All right. I'll close the public hearing. Any further council discussion? All right, Carol, did you have a motion you'd like to make?
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we pass a resolution declaring La Habra Road unnecessary for present or prospective public use and vacating the same pursuant to the California Streets and Highways Code, not to be recorded until the items discussed in section 4, page 2 of the resolution, including the cooperation and implementation agreement, the final easement granted to the city, and all the conditions are worked out to the satisfaction of the fire entities.
Well, the city and the fire entities, yeah.
Well, the city and the fire entities.
Yep.
Second?
Second.
Norm?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Greg? Brian?
Yes.
John's yes. All right, moving on. Administrative items. Item 19.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This item is related to a GFOA, or Government Finance Officers Association award that we have won for the budget, and our finance manager, Angie, will say a couple of words about that.
Every year, I try to apply for this award. We have, I think since I've been as the finance manager, I've applied every year except for 1 year when they changed the guidelines. That was the only year. But in short, GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association, this is for, excuse me, United States and Canada, so it's a national association representing public finance officials across the United States and Canada, with the mission of promoting excellence in state and local government financial management. The Distinguished Budget Presentation Award Program was established back in 1984, and it's to encourage and assist state and local governments in preparing their budget of the highest quality. So This award here, it's a significant achievement for the city of La Habra Heights. It reflects the commitment of both the governing body and staff to upholding the highest principles of government budgeting. And to receive this award, the budget must be rated proficient, and again, it must meet their criteria, which assesses how well the city's budget serves as a policy, a financial plan, operations guide, and a communication device. So I applied for the award for this fiscal year, for the fiscal year 2024-25, and we received it. I think we received it back in December. So I'm just taking this now because we had so many items in the other meetings. I didn't want to overwhelm anyone. So we received the budget for, or the award for this year's budget.
Good work.
And I don't know if it's in here, but I don't know that we've discussed it, Rafferty, but I think we also had a really good audit too, right?
Audit will be coming up to next month's meeting. We're just completing
Sorry
the
to
audit.
jump the gun, but
We're just completing it, and audit budget committee is going to be meeting tomorrow with the auditors to finalize it, so we can bring it to the next meeting.
congratulations on that too, Angie.
It's all of us.
All right. Item 20.
Just as we talk about the budget award for the 24-25 budget, now is the time for our mid-year budget review and adjustments. So finance manager and our finance team have gone through the budget and looked at our expenditures up to date and future expenditures and revenues, and has made some proposed budget amendments for our current budget. And I will hand it off to our finance manager, Angie, for her to elaborate a little more on those, and we'll hand it over to Angie.
So after going through the entire budget, kind of trends, analyzing every object code and all the funds, we'll start with the general fund. So staff is projecting revenues to increase by $238,213. The original budget was approved, it was about 6.4 million, and now revenue is going to increase by increase to an estimated 6.7 million. This includes an estimated 91,000 increase in franchise fee, and then as well as encroachment permits. So we're estimating about a $50,000 increase for encroachment permits, and as well as an increase of 62,000 due to administrative cost reimbursements for this fiscal year. In regards to expenditures are projected to decrease by an estimated 298,181. So originally expenditures were budgeted at 6.6 million, and now they are decreasing to 6.3 million. So the decrease is primarily due to staff cost savings. We also had election savings, and we were able to reallocate the rest of the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, the funding to cover our general law enforcement. So that really helped us a lot. I believe, I want to say it was just for this fiscal year about a little over 400,000 that we paid from ARPA to cover law enforcement. So that was great. There is a little estimated increase in the expenditures, primarily due to part-time staffing, just because we didn't, at the time, I don't believe we had the interim city manager budgeted as, we had them budgeted as full-time instead of part-time, so that's the only increase, but it's really not an increase. We had a slight increase to legal services and as well as storm damage cleanup and street improvement projects. And again, in regards to ARPA funds, we spent everything, which is good. So we don't have to worry about allocating any of that monies. Fire fund, the fire fund expenditures are projected to increase by an estimated $18,000. So expenditures were approved at $3,044,515, and they are increasing to $3,062,935. So this increase is primarily due to reallocating wages and vehicle maintenance costs. In addition, there is an estimated expenditure decrease of $21,000, and that's due to some staff cost savings. So with the new numbers, the new general fund is projected, the revenues are projected at $6.7 million, and the expenditures are projected to be $6.3 million. So this results in a surplus of $347,484 in revenues over expenditures. So that's a good sign. Any questions?
Any questions from the council?
Just one for me. One of the things since I'm brand new, one of the things I was asking Rafferty the other day was how many fewer administrative staff do we have from 5 years ago? And obviously we have unfilled staff positions. Since this is just a budget adjustment for known issues, could you explain a little bit, Angie, how the process for, if we have open staffing allocations out there, how do we reflect that in the budget? Where is that? And how do we know that it's there and what's available to us?
Sure. So, for example, if we have a position that hasn't been filled, we know that position was budgeted beginning July 1st. So let's just say July 1st to December 31st. We never filled that position. So what I do is I recalculate, I go through all the journal entries, all the facts, all the numbers that are already recorded, and I recalculate everything. And then I see there, okay, we didn't hire this position, so that amount is already a savings. So if we have staff that works over, it'll just reduce, let's just say $50,000 for a position. It'll just, whatever we go over for the regular current staff that's working, I'll just reduce that number by the $50,000. So that'll tell me how much I have. Well, I don't know if we'll hire someone beginning January 1st, so I just keep those numbers on the books because we may hire someone, we may not, I'm not sure. But to play safe, I just keep those numbers there.
That's fine, thank you.
Any other questions? Angie, thank you again for your work. Do we need to approve this, right? Yeah.
Yes, please, yes.
Do I have a motion?
I move we approve the fiscal year 2024 mid-year budget amendment.
Second? Second. Brian?
Yes.
Greg? Yes. Carol?
Yes.
Norm?
Yes.
And John's yes. Item 21.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The item before you tonight is the the potential of hiring a municipal code enforcement program city prosecutor. So a separate attorney firm that specializes in handling code enforcement type cases and can help us through that legal process of code enforcement. Obviously, when we brought on new city attorneys firms, this was something that was discussed with city attorneys firms, and I think our city attorney right now is more than happy to have somebody else handle those things as far as code enforcement related cases. So the city did have several meetings with our code enforcement committee, which is a ad hoc committee of 2 council members and 2 planning commissioners, to discuss the code enforcement program overall in total. In that one, you can see some of the things that we have done up to this point. We've hired some code enforcement staff. We have a part-time code enforcement officer that was here previously, who is more of a like a senior code enforcement officer to help us move through those cases and has the experience for that. We also hired a full-time code enforcement brush clearance inspector. So we have somebody that can do dual function on a full-time permanent basis that handles code enforcement and brush clearance, since there is some overlap between those 2 positions. But the other key component of this was having an attorney's firm that can help us either with our notices to that, if we need to go through a court process for inspection warrants or abatement warrants or receiverships or whatever it may be. They have the specialized knowledge and expertise and can handle that aspect for us. City released an RFP for city prosecutor code enforcement attorney services. We did receive proposals from 3 companies. The 3 companies were DePere, Rosenblit, and Litvak, Jones and Mayer Law, and Servium by Right. All 3 firms have experience in code enforcement and well-established track records from there. We took these city prosecutors to our code enforcement committee to review and make a recommendation to city council. And the code enforcement committee's recommendation and staff's recommendation would be for the city council to authorize moving forward with an agreement with DePere, Rosenblit, and Litvak to handle those city prosecutor code enforcement cases for that. In the agenda tonight, you can sort of see their hourly rates that they charge. This law firm previously did work for the city. Before we had BB&K, they were a firm that did handle code enforcement activities and cases for the city. So they are familiar with Habra Heights and should be able to help us potentially streamline our process through code enforcement. And if we do need to take other steps, have the legal expertise to make sure we can take those steps at an appropriate level that is all okay with our city attorney, since obviously he's our city attorney and is the top of that food chain there.
You keep saying this. I'm completely good with this. I don't like doing this stuff. It's all good.
I just want to make sure I'm hearing you correct, Rafferty. So our code enforcement subcommittee has approved this. Our city attorney has approved this. So the 2 key stakeholders are...
Yes. Yes.
And this person would work at the direction of our city attorney, correct?
You know, primarily more through RAF's direction. I'd just be an administrative step. So it's fine for Rafferty.
City manager?
Yeah.
Direct?
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. I mean, I can jump in if there's questions, but these people know what they're doing. It's good.
Okay. All right. Any council comments or questions?
No, just a comment. I mean, we looked at all 3 firms, and this firm is they're very qualified in code enforcement. They know our city. They worked for us before. They did a really good job in there before. So I was happy that they when we put out an RFP, that they're willing to come back and work for the city.
And given, I'm glad we did this work. I assume this has been going on for a little bit of time, but I think it's going to fit in very nicely with what we need to do going forward, which is get a lot more aggressive with resolving these issues. I agree completely with the comments that were made.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Code enforcement and brush clearance need to be 2 very aggressive areas that we pursue going forward. So I'm glad we're at this point.
The Litvak firm is really an experienced quality firm. They know this stuff well.
I'm hoping this will let us move quickly.
One thing about practicing law that you learn early on is the more you understand the subject, the cheaper it is to do your work. And so in reality, the people with the greater knowledge that don't have to learn how to do things, they deliver a more cost-effective product. In my years in practice, it's always been that way. So I support and recommend that we authorize the employment of the Litvack firm and direct the city attorney to create the agreement in pursuance of that.
Question almost sounded like a motion, but I think Norm has a question.
Just out of curiosity, they worked for us in the past. Why did we cease to have them work for us?
So at the time when the city moved to Best and Krieger as our city attorney's firm, all of those services were sort of consolidated with BBK. So it wasn't that they were poor performing or there was an issue. It was just sort of that time when we moved to Best and Krieger, they had all of that under one umbrella, one house. So everything just sort of rolled down into that. I know that was something when we moved forward with selecting the new city attorney firm, it was discussed and specifically noted that there's the potential that we might hire outside counsel related to code enforcement.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Carol.
I just wanted to comment at the Code Compliance Committee. We have now two gentlemen, Dave Munoz and
Kevin Wiggins.
Kevin Wiggins. And Mr. Munoz mentioned that certain cases have gotten to the point where they cite them and nothing happens.
Yep.
So he literally, and I interpreted, he would like some more support.
I am excited that we're at this place because I think, again, and we'll go into that more in some of the other items, but this couldn't happen at a better time. So, Greg, I think you were almost there with the motion, so do you want to restate what you said earlier, and we can, unless anyone else has a comment?
I move that the council approve the selection of DePierre Rosenblatt Litvack to perform the city prosecutor's services and direct the city attorney and city manager to prepare the necessary documents and execute the agreement to get them on board as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Norm?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Greg? Brian?
Yes.
John's yes. All right. Talking about excitement, let's move on to reclassification of fire department personnel.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This item before you was on the agenda in January. We pulled it to have a little further discussion with our Fire Department City Council Ad Hoc Committee. So essentially, the Fire Department has seen some changes recently. As we had mentioned, Al Alcalde, who was our longtime fire marshal, had retired. When Al was here, the position was part-time, so it was a part-time basis. We had trying to set up that succession plan. And the chiefs had looked at the possibility of filling that role, and the recommendation came of moving who was Captain Jorgensen, so Ryan Jorgensen, who has been in the operational side of the fire department for a long time here. He's actually, we started about the same time, so we've both been here about the same amount of time. So he had been one of our full-time captains in the fire department, transitioning him over to take over the fire marshal duties. It did a couple of good things for us. It gave a bit of period of time where there was some transition and overlap where Chief Alcalde was able to work with Mr. Jorgensen and help transfer that knowledge, which is always a benefit to be able to transfer those knowledges from one individual to the next. The other benefit is he's already familiar with the Heights, so he's not going to get lost. We can send him out into the city. He'll be able to find his way home. He knows the properties well. Being a longtime firefighter and captain here, he's very familiar with operations and fires in the community, so it gives him a different perspective when he's out looking at properties and doing those brush clearance duties and inspections, as he has fought fires in the city, wildland fires and structure fires. So it gives him a very nice, unique knowledge to that one. So the recommendation is to reclassify that position from a part-time to a full-time, and that will allow us to move Mr. Jorgensen into that position as our fire marshal. So that was one of them, and the other is administratively, the fire department has been needing a little more administrative help for that. We've been filling that role on an interim basis for a little while with Edward Martin, who has been another longtime captain that we have had here at the Heights. We need some of that administrative help for the chief. And the chief is also a part-time employee, so he's not here 40 hours a week. So there is definitely a need and a role to have a person that can be here, do those duties, and being a deputy chief allows a greater interoperability with our surrounding fire departments and cities, as a deputy chief has the same rank as the chief and is able to make those command decisions out in the field. So it will help us operationally when we fall in with the county on some larger events and things that go on fire-wise from that one. So we have not had a deputy chief position for a while. It was somebody left, and then it was just not filled. It was changed. Those classifications were changed. So at this time, the recommendation is to reactivate that deputy fire chief position, so we can move Mr. Martin in to fill that role as deputy fire chief. So those are a couple of the things that we have on the agenda for you tonight. I'm sure Chief Brookhiser would like, if there's anything you'd like to add, Chief.
No, but we're not. It's not really. It's a zero-sum game where we don't lose money on it. We just transfer the responsibilities to one person and we keep the full time. I think we discussed that in the ad hoc, and I think it's a good move for us, and it's going to make it a lot easier for us. So thank you for your support.
I won't say it's zero sum, because I actually think the city benefits. So I think there's a lot of benefit the city gets from this, and again, this is one of those things that I know has been a long time in the making, but it couldn't happen at a better time to have someone that's focused on our brush clearance program and, quite frankly, the changes and improvements and maturity that needs to happen in that program. So I wasn't joking when I said I'm excited about this, because I think there's several things that are beginning to come together that are going to help us tremendously in the months ahead.
I have a question, if I might. A resident approached me a few days ago to ask what the difference is between assistant chief and deputy chief, and also is the assistant chief position still going to exist? So for the record, if you could answer that, I'd appreciate it.
I will hand some of that over to Chief. He can probably do a better job explaining the differences between an assistant chief and a deputy chief. Far more experience in that part of it. At the moment, we still have a classification for assistant fire chief. That's about all I can say at that at the moment. But Chief, you want to talk about the differences between duty-wise and responsibility-wise between an assistant chief and a deputy chief?
Okay, so the fire chief is your main executive officer for your fire program. Your deputy chief would be the subordinate that would have delegated authority if the fire chief is away. Some departments aren't that large like ours, so we don't have enough staffing to have a fire chief, a deputy fire chief, an assistant chief, and a battalion chief. We just don't have that. So it's all just monikers that are assigned to different positions, but on the bigger scale, a deputy chief would be higher in rank than an assistant fire chief, but it doesn't really make a difference here with how our staffing works out. But when I send Ed out on any type of assignment where he's representing me, it's better that he's called a deputy chief among the people that he's operating with when he goes to other departments. So they know he's my deputy. Does that make sense?
Yes, and in this way they got it straight from the horse's mouth instead of from my interpretation thereof. So thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Any other questions?
I have a procedural question. So a couple of years ago, they switched to a 3-captain model, which had to come to the council. So I just am questioning procedurally what has to come to the council and what doesn't. I mean, is the 3-captain model disappearing? Does the council have to approve that? How does this all work legally?
So the 3-captain model came to the council because we were creating those 3 full-time positions. So there is some budget allocations that needs to get rearranged or readjusted to it and create those positions, since we didn't have those full-time captain positions in that way. I'll let the chief explain a little more, but I know in some of the meetings that I've had with chief, the chief's had with our council fire department ad hoc committee, they feel they can move forward with the captain model as a part-time model as it was before. They have a robust staff of captains currently out there today, and they can continue to fill our obligations daily with those part-time captains.
So would you like me to comment on that? Okay, so the problem with the 3-captain model on a 56-hour work week is that we only have 3 captains. That means if anybody wants to take a day off, there needs to be a captain that is able to move in, and to work the spot. You have to have 24-hour, 365-day staffing at a fire station. So once the 3-captain model was adopted, the part-time captains went away. They just kind of fell off the staffing model. Okay, so we were only left with 3 captains. Anytime a captain took off, then one of the 2 other captains would have to step up and work, or we put them in what's called a forced hire or overtime position. We must force them to work because we have to maintain minimum staffing. So by eliminating the 3 captains model, what has happened is that we've been able to make a more robust part-time captains model. Chief Jorgensen was the last full-time captain that we had. And when we have enough of the part-time captains, then we can fill the staffing model a month in advance. So we always have a captain that's available. It worked out better that way, so we had more captains that were working for us. We didn't have to force hire anybody if we couldn't staff. And then the biggest problem we run into usually is a holiday. Christmas is a tough one to staff. Thanksgiving, Easter, these family holidays, a lot of times, and in the bigger departments, heck, you're just working on Christmas Day. That's just the way it goes. Here, because they're volunteers, right, they don't necessarily have to volunteer to work on Christmas Day, so it puts us in a bind where we, as a staff for the fire department, we kind of have to work around who's willing to jump on the grenade on one of these major holidays. And in this case, Captain Terrell was the one that worked on Christmas Day, I do believe. Does that answer the question?
I think so, but basically it doesn't have to come to the council unless there's a change in the funding.
Yeah, I don't know how that works.
Yeah, Mayor. Yeah, it's usually for 2 purposes. Usually you have a HR resolution or some council authority to create a position so you can budget for it accordingly. That's 1. And then 2, from a labor law perspective, if you're creating positions or new positions, you then can do a job description, and then within labor law, you can assign tasks within that job description and so those are the 2 primary reasons it would come to council. Basic reorganizations that don't create a new classification wouldn't have to, other than for public disclosure and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Yep.
I guess the only thing we need to catch up on is just get the org chart so it matches everything we have in place right now. I don't know if we've done that or not, but that needs to be done.
Once everything's approved and ready, then we can update our organizational charts.
With the part-time captain models and what, if we approve this tonight, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Any others?
I'll make that as a motion to approve the reclassification of the fire department positions.
Second.
Second.
Brian?
Yes.
Greg? Yes. Norm?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
I'm yes. Item 23.
This item and the next couple will probably lend ourselves to be one big conversation. So as we moved into 2025, this is time to kick off our 2025 brush clearance program season. The item before you tonight is a resolution, Resolution 2025-08, that declares weeds, rubbish, refuse, and other combustible materials growing upon or in front of properties constitute a public nuisance. In addition, dirt and debris and runoff from private properties upon which public roadways also constitutes a public nuisance, further declaring its intention to provide for the abatement of such nuisances and setting a date for the public hearing. So the item before you tonight is where we kick off and we look at the first step of the brush clearance program, which is to adopt the resolution and which declares those items as public nuisances and our intent to abate those. We also need to set a hearing date for April 14th, 2025, which will be the official public hearing to authorize the start of the program. And also attached is the legal notice. That is something that goes out to all of the residents. It goes out as part of the brush clearance program brochure that goes out annually to the residents, letting them know about the brush clearance program. So this item does include the draft legal notice for 2025 season. From there, I know we do have a new fire marshal. Thank you very much for that one. And so obviously looking at that and moving forward, Chief Jorgensen has some ideas and thoughts on the brush clearance program in general. But the items contained in this one are the first steps in that process of setting the date to declare all those items public nuisances and our intent to abate from there. Myself and or the chiefs would probably be happy to answer any questions you may have.
So, Rafferty, I think we're in a very, very different place than we were last year for a couple reasons. Number one, obviously, we do have a new fire marshal, and I want to see some ownership of this program there. But number two, I mean, obviously, the elephant in the room is what's happened in California since then. And I think we would be remiss as a council not to take a serious look at our brush clearance program as a result of that in conjunction with code enforcement. I think those two things go hand in hand. As I've said at other meetings, and I think it was said earlier by a resident, but for the grace of God goes the city. We didn't have a fire start in our city when the winds were blowing 50, 60 miles an hour. And we didn't have a fire start when fire resources were incredibly stretched thin in numerous other fires that were happening on January 7th. I do think we need to take a real hard look at how we do brush clearance in the city, how we do code enforcement when it comes to creating a defensible space, i.e. having junk and clutter and debris that's, impacting the ability to create that defensible space. So what I'd really like to do is work to get a public workshop established on this topic and bring together, there's several items in here. Greg, I know there's a couple that are on your agenda. There's obviously some that are on mine. So where we bring residents together, we talk about, and I've asked Brian to think and benchmark what other cities in our situation are doing in this space. I agree completely with what the public comment earlier, where we need to get aggressive in how we manage nonconformance. I've also talked to several of the brush clearance contractors that have worked. They have ideas about how we could be more efficient at getting the work done by encouraging the landowners to do it through some, I think, aggressive pricing mechanisms that they're willing to work with people on. So I think there's a lot of moving parts here. So I'd like to work on an agenda for getting a public workshop held, because I think we need to present the ideas to the public and also help them understand in a more open forum than what this meeting allows, to be able to discuss why we might do things such as move a lot quicker on getting the clearance activities done. I think it's important for people to hear, even in the code enforcement space, why clutter and why debris located on a property impacts not only your property but your neighbor's property. I've heard that now 3 or 4 times from people in this city, that I spend $1,500, I spend $2,000 clearing my property, yet the property next door creates such a hazard to my home, and I can't mitigate that. So those are my thoughts on this. I don't know what we want to do with the resolution, given what I just said, if we want to move forward with it, or if we want to pause it, have the public workshop, get ideas from the public and move forward, or is this just a procedural issue where we need to just keep the ball rolling, yet there's time in the schedule to be able to do those other things?
Mayor, if I may, this is sort of a state law thing to get the ball rolling. Okay. So my recommendation, unless you differ, is to do this and then do more on top of this would be my recommendation.
All right, I'll open it up to the council.
One of the questions I've always had about this area is one of the things we don't generally address in brush clearing, at least as far as my experience has been in the city. We don't address trimming trees 10 feet up, and we don't address the dangers of dead fronds on palms. I'm not exactly sure. I'd like to make those, addressable. They're important things. You know, in our house, we've done a lot of work with swimming pool pumps, and we're going to put in 2 Davies head on our property. We're going to plan out a more aggressive approach. The reason I'm saying all that is because I want people to start thinking about doing that for themselves. If someone has to come on your property, if the fire department wants to defend off your property, if they're working on a garden hose, that doesn't do diddly shit for them. So realistically, many of us could easily afford to put in Davy heads on 1.5-inch line so that there's some room of pressure available. So I think this is a piece of a much bigger pie. I'm happy to approve the resolution as it stands today, but I'd like to see more out of our new fire marshal about how much more aggressive can we be. I like clearing debris off the road. That's important. I'd like to stop seeing bougainvillea rolling over walls onto the street and blocking. You know, I know we basically say you can't do that, but we don't force the clearing. I'd like to mandatorily force the clearing of that stuff. I'd like to mandatorily clear trees up 10 feet where they are exposed in an area that is subject to flammability. And I'd really love to see palm trees trimmed. I mean, I can't tell you how many palm trees there are in the city that are not being trimmed. And there's just dead fronds hanging. If we have a serious wind and a frond takes off, it's like throwing a javelin through the side of a building. So, and by that, all I'm really saying is, Ryan, how much further can we go? How much more aggressive can we be?
So I think, you know, Greg, I think those are, you know, great examples. I second the issue with palm trees, and palm trees are right up there in my book with eucalyptus as far as their ability to promote fire spread through the city. So I think hopefully, Brian, you're taking notes of the items we can cover in a workshop. I do think we've heard some timeline suggestions, so I'd like to, you know, I think for the workshop we should talk about how we get more aggressive from a timing perspective, how we get more aggressive from an actual fuel abatement perspective. You know, you brought up a couple different types of fuels that we see in this city, but also I want to make sure people understand. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that don't watch the news and maybe haven't seen what's happened, but like I said, I have firsthand experience and would be happy to share, you know, some very explicit details about what happened when you have properties that are located so close together that they're indefensible, that you cannot defend them from an exposure fire that happens right next door. So I think we as a city, for the most part, I think we're in a very good space because of our zoning requirements. However, I know it has also come up through several residents about we have modifications to those requirements that are beginning to allow houses to be built, you know, right next to each other in the city. So I think there's a lot of things we need to talk about, and like I said, these meetings aren't too conducive to a back and forth. So that's why I'm really recommending that at least we start with a workshop that's focused on, I think, that the immediate task at hand, which really is looking at our brush clearance program and defining what that needs to look like for this year. I also think another not separate workshop is really looking at, are we comfortable as a city? I know I'll raise my hand and say I'm the first one about property rights and letting people optimize their property, but however, given the lessons learned from the Palisades fire and from the Altadena fire, are there lessons learned there where maybe we shouldn't have over-the-counter exemptions for certain modifications when people want to build a home 10 feet or 20 feet or 30 feet from another home? Do we understand the implications of that? And I think we should, as a city, understand those and make sure we're comfortable with them. So I think there's a second opportunity to look at our zoning and planning requirements. So I'll be quiet, I know.
Shouldn't we include home hardening in this workshop, or is that, or you want to take that on a separate issue?
I think that's a separate issue. I'd like to, there's some, I think there's some experts in the city, especially the chair of the EPC that has a lot of insights there. I think that's a separate topic, so I think we're up to 3 now. So I think we we should be looking at, and maybe we can group that with the planning and code work that we do, because home hardening and taking a look at our codes to make sure that the latest and greatest lessons learned from this event are beginning to be incorporated into that. Because there are some, I can tell you that when you look at Altadena in particular, the newer homes had a higher survivability when they had the defensible space around them because of the new requirements that they had about, inflammable materials being used in construction, and most importantly, about the roof venting and attic venting that really stopped a lot of these homes from being significantly impacted. So yes, I think there's three areas we need. Well, two general areas. Let's group one. And we can start with brush clearance. Brian, I think a few of us can get together and help with getting that agenda put in place, finding a date that works, making sure it's far enough out that we can get. I've got to believe, given what we saw with Firewatch and their very, the meeting they had 70 people at that meeting, 50 to 70 people at that meeting. So I think the public is very interested in this, but also if we are going to do something that drives cost into the city, which is, I think, necessary, I want to make sure that people have every opportunity to comment on that as we go forward. And by cost, I mean there's going to be a cost associated with getting more aggressive in this space. And while I've been a believer in continuous improvement, I think I'm going to leave it to the fire marshal to determine what that looks like, because I'm not an expert there, because I know the past fire marshal has always worked with people to, over time get something done. But I think there's some threats in this city that need to be addressed immediately. And one thing we might want to consider is even if the city, I get there's some people that maybe can't afford it, but maybe it's an investment we make as a city into some of these properties, and we come up with a financing mechanism to help those people do it. And whether it be, I know we're not a rich city, but we've got some money in our budget where we might be able to do some low-cost loans, we might be able to do other things for residents, find grants, do things to remove the highest risks first. So I'll stop.
And thank you. Quite frankly, that was a suggestion I was to make also, to help those who are either elderly or fallen on hard times to and actually want to comply and have complied in the past. The other item I'd mention is if your neighbor's having trouble, help your neighbor, plus the fact it's good to communicate with your neighbors your concerns about, I'll tell an embarrassing story about myself. There was a palm tree growing right near the property line. I thought it was on my neighbor's property. My neighbor thought it was on my property. The thing was a volunteer. It grew and grew and grew. Now it's 30 feet tall. And it become more expensive I can't trim it myself anymore and so forth. And found out my neighbor thought it was my tree. Neither of us wanted it. So had I talked to my neighbor beforehand, I could have saved a lot of money. So again, just an embarrassing, humorous example of what happens when you don't talk to your neighbor about things like this.
All right, any other? Okay, do I have a motion?
Move to adopt Resolution 2025-08.
Second?
Second.
Norm?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes?
Greg? Brian?
Yes.
And I'm yes. Item 24.
Continuing the discussion, a little more of that discussion related to defensible space, not only just on properties and other things, but also other areas of the community as well where we may need to look at or focus and try to understand the best way to provide that defensible space between structures and residences in the case of a wildfire. I know this is something that's you wanted to talk about, Mayor, and some of the experiences you've seen firsthand in these fires recently.
So I think I've talked enough about this as part of item 23, but what I will add to this item here, and something I have also asked our newly ordained fire marshal to look at, is the threat that the habitat poses to the city. So I'll just introduce that here. The Habitat owns almost 750 acres, 733 acres, I believe. I have exchanged emails with their executive director and made sure I copied the chair of their board, letting them know that status quo, at least in my opinion, is not acceptable, and I said that as the mayor of the city. So I hope I didn't overreach in that aspect, but I did let them know that I would like to understand how specifically they're looking at their fuel and the risk that that fuel poses to this city. Are they doing any type of fuel surveys, going out and looking at where this fuel is located, understanding the risk that a fire starting in a certain place in the habitat poses to the city, because not all fuel is created equal, not all fire start locations are created equal. So, you know, if you've got habitat that abuts 30 or 40 homes, you want to get a little bit more aggressive there compared to habitat that maybe is 5 or 6 acres away from the nearest home. So those are the things that I'm kind of challenging them to look at. Like I said, I'm going to meet with them in the near future. Welcome to have any of you come along with me if anyone's interested in meeting with the Habitat. So that's one of the topics. Obviously now we have a second topic, which will be the heli hydrant issues. So whatever we see, we need, whatever changes we need to see, we need to make there. I don't think there's going to be an issue there. They've been very cooperative in that space. And then last thing with the Habitat is given that they are our largest property owner, or one of the largest, I think they are the largest property owner in the city, coupled with this new norm, this new fire risk norm, along with the passage of their property tax on the residents of the city, I do think there is a need for the city of La Habra Heights to hold a position within the Habitat to make sure that our money is being spent wisely and that these risks that we're talking about here are properly managed. So,
I'd like to.
You'd like to go with me, or you want to say something?
Well, I'll be happy to go with you unless Mr. Bergman. And when you look back over these old agreements, it says in here, the parties agree the city will have the power to require the authority to undertake an annual brush clearing program encompassing all authority land within the city in accordance with the reasonable requirements established by the city's fire chief. So the agreement says that, but apparently, as I understand it, we've never really pushed them. I guess that another thing that Mr. Brooks brought up, and we verified with Whittier people, is in Whittier, the Habitat Authority cleans 200 feet away from the homes. And that's kind of a broad, sloppy statement, but I don't think they do that here.
Yeah,
So I
here they're
think we
cleaning
need
200
to
feet
tie
from the
down
structure.
more what we want them to do. And I think the chief and his deputy really need to, focus on this, and so that's what I'm saying.
Yep.
I'll be happy to go with you. I'll give you my list of items that I need to be cleaned up in the agreements, but maybe Brian wants to go, or
I would like to go, yes.
yeah, because I think you guys might be more aggressive than I would be, because I sort of like the Habitat, but
I love,
think we
look,
need aggressive people.
I want to be on the record. I love what the Habitat stands for.
I know, right?
I like the fact that they have their funding. I just want to make sure that the funding is used to protect the citizens of La Habra Heights from the risk that the Habitat presents to the city.
And we have the
And that
authority
risk-
right in the agreement.
That risk changed substantially on January 7th.
And I think the fire department, you really need to take a look at the habitat, and if it's 200 feet, not necessarily from the building, but from the property line as far as I'm concerned, because the people use that space and they have flammable materials, in that space. And we need to work with the habitat where they really change their mindset as far as their aggression, as far as their, fire clearance. Because they're stewards, it's a public entity, it's public land, and they're the stewards of it. And to me, their number one thing is to make sure that this is safe from any fires, that occur in the habitat. And there's been fires up there, so that's one thing that really makes me nervous, because they're endangering our community if they don't clear the brush out of there. So it needs to be a clear, defensible space. And, I guess it's up to, according to that language, it's up to the fire chief to make a determination that, hey, you need to clear X number of feet away from the roadways or away from the structures or away from, our city. So we need to be aggressive on that.
Well, unfortunately, the word in there is the reasonable. And of course, that I rather wish they would have we would have had an actual number of feet in the agreement itself. But
Norm, I think the definition of reasonable changed.
Well,
I think we had a definition.
I know
of
it'd be
reasonable
a lot
now.
nicer if we had a specific number in there, just to point out.
Again, I'll look to we have two experts in the room, but I think CAL FIRE has very clear guidance in this space about what.
Okay, so I've listened to the banter, and I just want to say this, the city attorney and Mr. Steffer will understand that the fire marshal is a compliance officer. Compliance to what? Compliance to codes or regulations that are adopted by the city that we can enforce. I just can't say because I'm the fire chief, you must do this. I can't do that, or you're going to have lawsuits. You're going to be having people coming after me or the city because why do I have to do that? Where does it say I have to do that? So Norm makes a good point in this area where if we can't impose any sanctions, we can't put fees, we can't cite anyone unless we have some type of code or written document that says this is what is expected, and it can be clearly defined. So that's what a compliance officer will do. If we can look at what you'd like to see compared to where we're at right now, like maybe it would be a good idea to talk to Whittier and say, well, what agreement do you have with the Habitat Authority? How are you getting the 200 feet from them while we're struggling to get the 200 feet? I'll look into that. Okay, we can say, what do you have something?
I was going to say, I'm going to put that back on you.
Yeah.
To look into
I'll look into that.
But also, I want to be clear about what my expectations are. My expectations are that I'm going to look to you and your team to bring forward recommendations for us as a city about what those codes should be. We'll put them, we'll codify them, we'll put them, make them law, we'll attach the penalties to them. But honestly, I really look to you and your team to bring forward what's going to keep us safe. I mean, I kind of think of that as your primary job. Your job is to keep us safe and bring forward recommendations in this space, because I think those have weight.
Yes,
I
agree.
They have weight that if you come to our workshop and you say, this is what I need you to do given the changes that happened or that need to happen after January 7th. So the changes that Greg suggested, I think they're long in coming. And I think we have the burning platform to make the city safe right now. I want to get it done while people, these recent events are fresh in people's minds. I don't know what I hate to bring this up because I always criticize politicians that do this, but for a minute I'm going to digress into that space. A lot of people lost their lives on January 7th. And while I sit here and I can do something about it, I want to get aggressive, and I want to make sure we're doing everything we can do as quickly as we can do it to keep the people in this city safe, because no amount of money is going to bring back those people that died. So I hate to use a body count as a platform to drive change, but sorry, I'm going to do it in this instance and say, as a council and as the professionals that work in the city and as the people that are responsible for keeping the citizens safe, we have to do these things. So I hear you. We'll make sure he has the tools that he needs, but like I said, I look forward to working with you guys on bringing the recommendations to us as the experts, you know, in the city on what we need to do with both the habitat, but also what we need to do for ourselves.
If I could make another suggestion, as you know, we have 3 members appointed to the to CTAC, and of course they're all residents. One of whom is Roy Francis, who's a former fire captain, former chief of Los Angeles of our volunteer fire department. Perhaps we ought to work closer with them and have them help us formulate an approach to the board.
Good idea.
And perhaps on an ongoing basis, because one of the real problems I see is we've taken each other for granted for so long, and they're off doing their thing, we're off doing our thing. We haven't communicated very well over the years. Now people have got set in their ways, and we have to correct it.
Yeah, I know that's a volunteer position, and we do have people that are there. I know when I was running EPC, we had an issue where the person that was there didn't quite align with the direction the city was going, so I think that is something we need to ensure that the folks that are on CTAC are aligning with. I mean, that's why they're there. They're representing us, so they should be aligning with our brush clearance program. They should be aligning with the objectives that we sit within the city.
And of course, if they disagree with something, I want to hear their reasons why, too.
Carol?
I have a question. Does your Belinda abut Chino Hill State Park? Yes. So is there any kind of clearance? Because there's homes right up there.
The city only generally maintains up until the boundaries of the state park, and the state park doesn't do anything.
Oh, well,
So we try to get state grants from CAL FIRE to help us, because there's a lot of open space. When you're driving on the 91, you just look to if you're going east, you look to your left and you see all of it. And CAL FIRE is incredibly difficult to deal with because they put all the environmental restrictions and other stuff on any of the funds, and it's always a struggle to get anything done. But we try. But we generally are only within our jurisdiction where we have landscape easements, or it's within the city, and the state park doesn't do anything.
Okay. Any other comments?
Just a comment. I know you're aligned with this as far as a position on the board, and I just want to make sure that the rest of the council wants a position on that board over there.
Do we need to agendize that?
Do we, or?
Well, it's in the scope of this sort of general discussion, but when we officially go forward, we should agendize.
I mean, we have a group, but it's just an advisory group, and we're not represented over there. We're not on the board. They already taxed our residents, and we're currently paying money, and we're not sitting on the board. And there's a 4-member board, not a 5. So.
I just want to make sure I understood what Todd said. Can we take an informal, can we have an informal discussion, or should we take?
No, you can have an informal discussion. I mean, we're talking generally about fire safety, right? And that's one aspect of this, so
Now,
yes.
Now, Brian, I know in the past there was a concern about the city incurring some type of liability by having a seat on the board. I would expect that board members usually are somewhat immune from liability.
So it's, my understanding is it's a JPA. They're a separate legal entity. There's no, as a separate legal entity, the city doesn't incur liability. The JPA would. Anybody on the board would have D&O insurance and government code protections, just like you do as city council members, is the general rule. So from pure board membership, I would not be that concerned of liability issues for having a membership.
The liability transferring from the habitat to the city because the city held a position on the board.
Correct.
Okay. Any concerns about us advocating with the habitat for having the city have a seat on the board? It just seems, again, Brian and I have been talking about this for a couple of years, and now that they've passed, was it PH? Now that PH has passed, and they are taxing our residents, and so our money is leaving the city now and going to that board to decide how it gets spent. I'm a firm believer that you shouldn't have taxation without representation. I think there's some great men that said that many, many, many years ago. So, you know, all the other entities that are taxed have a seat on that board. City of Whittier has a seat. Hacienda Heights has a seat.
Does Roland Heights have a seat?
But
Yeah, perhaps they might be interested too.
Who did you say?
Roland Heights, do they have
No,
a
they're
seat?
part of it. They're represented, because they're not a city, and they're represented under Janice Hahn, so
by the
yes,
county.
they do have a
Okay.
seat on the
So
board.
the county, so that's where I was going to go. The county,
yes.
the county has a seat. So, you know,
So are we the only one left out?
as far as I can tell, that, you know, as people that were taxed, so when you look at where the taxes went, the taxes are being paid by the city of Whittier, city of or the area around the habitat associated with Hacienda Heights, and the city of La Habra Heights. Those are the three areas that were taxed. So on that grounds alone, you know, I think we have standing to request, you know, that we be considered for a seat. It's interesting that the sanitation department still has a seat, yet the tipping tax went away how many years ago? So there might be an opportunity that if they don't want to increase the number of seats, that they replace an entity that is no longer relevant with one that is.
Well, they have four, which
Four.
doesn't make any sense
Exactly.
at all, because it's not,
How do you solve a tie?
pardon me?
We could solve it for them by having 5.
Right. All right, so no one opposes, I'm going to, again,
Yes, and I believe last meeting we discussed this a little bit, and there was a basic consensus to the concept of all 5 of us. I don't think it's changed at this point. So absolutely.
all right. Any other discussions on this topic, item 24?
One other item to the chief, how long does it take again to fill up our hill hydrant? Roughly?
20 minutes to fully fill it.
About 20 minutes. I talked to somebody who indicated that there's a problem with the not getting enough water up there in a hurry because of the size of the water pipes we have.
So, Norm,
Yes.
I'm very familiar with that. So one thing I want to remind everyone, our heli hydrant is 8,000 gallons. It is almost twice the size of most of the other heli hydrants, and there's a couple of reasons for that, which I won't go into, but there were some statistics that were shared about that were somewhat misleading. In other words, that, you know, other heli hydrants fill in 5 minutes, or they fill in 8 minutes. Most of the other heli hydrants are located directly next to a reservoir. So if you look at the ones that are up in Yorba Linda, they are tied directly to a Yorba Linda Water District reservoir. Also, they're 3,000 or 4,000 gallons, or 5.
2,500 to 5,000 gallons between them.
So we've got to make sure that we're comparing, when we make those comparisons, we compare apples to oranges. You also have to remember that ours fills, if you look at, what is it? It's about 300 gallons a minute that ours fills at. Most water dropping helicopters can only take 400 to 500 gallons. Blackhawk, the Firehawks are 4.
1,000 for the Firehawk. 412s are
400, correct?
1,000 gallons for the Firehawk. It's
1,000 gallons
It's
for
a
the
Type
Firehawk.
1, and then the 412s can carry 360, basically 400 gallons.
400 gallons. So unless you have a helitanker showing up, and they usually take a little while to get there, the fact that the first responding helicopters can only take 1,000 gallons at the most, you're only talking about 3 or 4 minutes to get enough water in there, and maybe let's say 5 minutes to get enough water in there so that they can begin to take water out of the heli hydrant. So there's a lot of variables around that. I know that we are working with, and we'll begin to work with the water district to see what's feasible up there as far as increasing the water flow. But you've got to remember that heli hydrant was located in the best location and the safest location for the helicopter, and sometimes that's not
The best location to get the water there.
to get the water there. So 300 gallons a minute, into that tank, and the fact that we've got mitigation measures in place that during high fire events, we're pre-filling that tank. And, you know, for the protection of our residents, I think we've got a really good program that the chief has instituted on how that tank's going to get used and filled and pre-filled. I think it's mitigated what could be a very expensive, you know, maybe even unnecessary fix for the water going into the tank or the fill time, because I don't know that the fill time is really relevant given the size of the tank and the amount of water that can be pulled in the first few minutes of an event.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Now, and to be fair to the people that operate water districts and the water company itself, if it doesn't matter how much water you've got in a system given an Altadena event or a Palisades event, when you start losing homes and you start having water mains that are no longer attached to anything, so, you know, once a home burns down, the water main opens, and when you've got hundreds of open water mains, it doesn't matter how much water you can put into a system, you're not going to get water up to that hydrant anyway, given that type of an event. So, you know, there's a lot of questions about water usage, but you've got to really look at the totality of the event to understand that if you don't have defensible space to begin with, and if you don't have a brush clearance program to begin with, and something like that starts, you're kind of, doesn't matter how much water you have. All right. Are we Rafferty 24?
Thank you, Mayor and council members. The next item is harmonizing fuel modification requirements with
25.
landscape screening ordinances. For this one has been agendized by Councilmember Steffler. It's sort of a takeoff from the time when Councilmember Steffler was on the Planning Commission here recently. The Planning Commission's had a series of meetings and discussions related to landscape screening and our requirements, and we've also had some discussions related to the fuel modification process. Fuel modification, to let everybody kind of expand on what that is. Anytime anybody is doing a development project, so building a new home, adding addition to your house, erecting a structure, the fire department will require fuel modification to be part of that project. Fuel modification establishes zones, so there's currently 3 zones. The state is looking at adding another zone, what they call a 0 zone. But right now there's 3 zones: Zone A, Zone B, and a Zone C. In each one of those zones are different requirements need to be done. So like Zone A is typically your wet zone. That's going to have your irrigated landscaping, grass and lawn, ground covering, some shrubbery and things like that. But it also establishes requirements for separation between shrubs and structures, and trees and structures, and groupings of trees. So sometimes as we're looking at landscaping plans for new housing, we have a screening requirement for it, but we also have some fire department requirements related to how close things can be placed to one another and structures. So sometimes it's a very delicate balancing act to try to get as much of that accomplished as possible. So Planning Commission's had a series of meetings on it, and Council Member Steffler has some thoughts and ideas about trying to make these two mesh and meld a little more. I'll let you expand on that.
So I became interested because our requirements of screening next to houses to break the massing and the fire fuel modification rules tend to conflict at various points in various circumstances. And so one of the things as I was studying this, I realized that we have a contract fire inspector, and Mr. Grubbs basically has a position that without regard to hardening of the house, how hardening the house has been, that if you put a tree you can't put a tree within 10 feet of the house. So I began a discussion to try to understand whether there is a way to look for what's existing in the fire marshal's general order, that you can get around that particular problem, that particular restriction, by providing information and facts that allow for an alternate manner and method of achieving protection for the structure. There's lots of ways to do that. Not the easiest, not the simplest one is, if you have a tree that's adjacent to the structure, make sure it's awfully wet and it can act as if ember curtain. But what I'm proposing for the council to do tonight is to simply refer this agenda item with its information in it jointly to the Emergency Preparedness Committee and the Planning Commission with instructions to attempt to determine how we can craft a way for those houses that meet certain hardening characteristics to be able to have screening materials closer to the house. And those screening materials obviously can be those that are not highly susceptible to catching fire. That really, we do already have a standard letter that's in the file of the Planning Commission, the Planning Department, that talks about alternate means and methods, but it really only relates to the siting of the house. This would be a situation where we refer them to the joint committees. They have a workshop. They invite in Mr. Grubbs and anyone from our fire department that wishes to be involved and discuss how these kind of issues might be resolved by additional hardening of the house areas. So my request tonight is for the committee to the council to refer these back to the EPC and the PC with instructions to evaluate the opportunities for developing a way to harmonize fuel modification requirements and our screening requirements.
I don't know if it might not be helpful for you to describe, you've told me the house that brought this to your mind, and it kind of gelled for me why it was important or what you were targeting.
So the issue becomes, it isn't a huge issue on a completely flat, large, open, vacant space. It's a significant issue where the house is sitting on a hill overlooking a cliff that rapidly drops down. There's really no way to screen 30 feet away from that house. Take Richard Fujo's house on Avocado Crest. I mean, that's a house that's built right to the edge of the hill. It's in their experience with the fire inspector was you can't put any greenery on your pool deck, even though it's all concrete. So he has no other way to screen the house. You can't. He has a drop-off of 45 feet before there's ever any chance to plant a tree, and that tree would have to be 110 feet tall. So and I'm not sure Richard's that unusual for people on Avocado Crest. Every one of your houses up there that are on the north-facing slopes tend to have immediate drop-offs without significant backyards. So I'd just like to see if we can't find a way that solves the risk of having flammable vegetation or semi-flammable vegetation within 10 feet of the house in those circumstances where the topography requires it. I think that's a reasonable thing to request, and it's a good discussion to have anyway.
Any other discussion? Mr. Rafferty, can you take that action to ask?
We'll take it back to Planning Commission and EPC, have the discussion with them, and then maybe organize a joint meeting between those two committees.
Okay.
I would assume Mr. Steffler would
Attend?
attend.
Yep. All right, 26.
Speaking of the Planning Commission, this is a request from the Planning Commission to initiate a code amendment related to landscaping and fencing development standards. As we were talking at previous item, they've had several meetings related to screening of houses, landscaping requirements, and also had a discussion related to fencing. Mostly fencing requirements are related to fences along the right-of-way, so along the street edge. Currently today, we have a requirement that nothing more than 42 inches may be solid, and everything above that up to 6 feet in height has to be 90% open. There was a discussion of should we allow solid walls or solid up to 6 feet along the right-of-way, so along the street edge, based on different requirements, and also landscaping related to blocking of views. Right now, our current requirements are to require 50% screening of all sides,
There's been a couple of projects they've looked at where there's a potential to put trees in what would be their primary view and their view corridor. Is this the appropriate thing for us to require landscaping in a manner that will block a resident's view? So they had several meetings to it. Our vice chair, Hess, took all of that back and forth from the committee and drafted some code language to it, some draft code language. Attached to your staff report is the Blast Planning Commission agenda report from them, which includes that draft language to it. Since the Planning Commission only makes decisions related to development on a property and doesn't set code requirements, it's still done by the council. The request is for the council to authorize them to initiate that code amendment process, which would be a public hearing at the Planning Commission to make the languages in the code and send that to the City Council for your consideration at a regular meeting, and then a second meeting to adopt the code amendment for it. Obviously, we've had a lot that's gone on recently related to landscaping and fuel modifications and those things. So at the last Planning Commission meeting, which was just a couple weeks ago, kind of let them know that the council is going to be taking up a lot of this information and things, and potentially some of that will be coming back to the commission and other committees for their consideration. But the commission wanted to move this item forward to let the council consider authorizing them to go through the code amendment process based on the draft language that's in the report. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from the council?
Well, go ahead, please. Go ahead. You got a question?
Carol?
I was going to defer to Greg.
Oh.
Well, yeah, I just think it would be, these are appropriate, this is an appropriate discussion to have in the context of our referral of item 25 to the EPC and the Planning Commission. I think it can be worked out. I don't have huge pains with this language, except I think the question of the alternate means and method calculation, the way of resolving that, should be part of this discussion. So I would recommend that we align it with item 25 and have the Planning Commission and the EPC meet and discuss whether this is the absolutely appropriate way, given the fact there may be an opportunity to design a way to have an alternate means and method to protect against wildfire risks, fire risks generally, given the hardening of the house. So that would be my recommendation on that.
Well, I'm not sure whether it's appropriate at this time, but some of the recommendations, keep in mind I've been around a long time, and the fence out in front of the house, that was, I think, 100% of the old councils in the 90s when I was involved. They wanted, we don't want a bunch of walls, solid 6-foot walls in front of people's houses. That's why there's the 42-inch, and then it's supposed to be non-obscuring open materials. So it looks like they're thinking of getting rid of that. And then I see something here that says no landscaping if it blocks the primary view of the new house. Well, I'm going to say, as an old timer, when somebody's building up there on a ridge line, I think they should consider putting something there to soften, assuming they can meet the fire code, so that the house doesn't stick out to be viewed by everyone. So I don't know if this is the time to say I would have questions about this stuff, or...
Well, the request was to send it back for initiation. So yeah, if you're not good with it.
Well, I'm okay with some of the stuff.
Yeah.
Some of the suggestions, but those two particularly, I wouldn't be real interested in approving them. So I don't know how the other people feel.
Well, it just says on there that it's not required. So in other words, the owner wouldn't have to stick a tree in front of his view shed. That's all that the way I read this thing.
Well, yeah, and I'm saying you see a house up on a ridge line, they don't have to do anything to obscure that new house on the ridge line?
No, I didn't say that. I mean, they could have lots of landscaping and maybe other trees and things, but just in the primary view, the way I read the thing, it's you don't have to stick something in your primary view.
Well,
that's what it says. I'm just reading.
and I think primary view, there is some definition, it's very broad. So,
Well, I think what they're trying to say is it can't be required in the primary view. I mean, it's really up to someone if they want to plant in their primary view. And that's generally not the issue because the view is usually not towards the street. It's usually a distant view, and so it's generally on the back side of the residence. The fence issue, I didn't bring that up, but I'll bring it up now. That I'm not in favor of a 6-foot wall. Period. I mean, unless of course it's all it's open and you can see right through it. I think that having a 6-foot CMU wall, a concrete wall, without on a normal plane obscures visibility, and I don't like that idea from a public safety issue, either police or fire. I think the 42-inch makes sense to me if you're going to have a solid wall down below and an open top to the wall where you can see through it. So I wouldn't be in favor of 6 feet as a front-facing wall at all.
Any other?
A question now, this, just to point out, in my neighborhood, my area and so forth, the vast majority of people have chain link fences. I'm one of the few people who don't. I just wonder what the objection is. I guess they want to increase the chain link fences on the backside of the house, or to not allow chain link fences on the back side road also, as well as the front of the road. The situation, of course, chain link fences are a lot cheaper to build, which is why a lot of people have done it in my neighborhood. Of course, for the poorest section of town, I suppose, but
Well, we know, Norm, there's non-conforming houses all over the place that
Yes.
have chain link fences. There's 3 of them on East Road, for heaven's sakes. But we haven't done anything to remove them. This only speaks to things that are going to be built or changed in the future, right? Because the other ones are legally non-conforming, I guess. My sense only is that chain link fences are properly used on sides of property as long as they're not obstructing views. They're safest and cheapest way to keep the coyotes off your property. But for me, my main, I don't even know why this is coming up at the moment. I mean, the item that we have is already in the code is adequate for the moment and perhaps needs to be studied further. I just don't see the motivation to want to make these specific changes.
So a couple things. I know on chain link, Rafferty, there's a theory that chain link is adding to some of the runoff pollution that we're seeing in the city. So I think we're seeing increased levels of zinc.
Zinc is, one of our TMDLs that we have is on the higher side is zinc, and some of that is, we have a lot of chain link fencing in the community, so obviously as that stuff wears, some of that zinc runs off, and we do see that in our stormwater.
That was one issue. And then, Carol, I hear what you're saying about, years ago, it might have been appropriate to have smaller fences. I think the world as we know it has changed. And I think there's probably a desire for security reasons to start having higher fences built.
no, it isn't the height. It's, you can have the 6-foot fence. You just, anything over 40 inches, you have to put up wrought iron, or that's just as protective as a wall, as a stone wall with a point on it.
Yeah, I don't know. I look at the house here on the corner with the barbed wire on the top as the entrance to the city, and that's kind of concerning. I know it's been there, but I think I agree with the ban on chain link is probably a good thing. There's other materials that we can use that are probably more aligned with our city and what we want to see going. Again, this is new construction going forward, so.
Well, for example, say I were to, heaven forbid, I don't intend to build a chain link fence. If I were to do so, it would not change the character of my neighborhood one bit. Now, the fences I have, at least on our property, are split wooden fences, basically, which obstruct nothing. They're just ornamental, largely.
And Norm, I think the Planning Commission, though, is looking forward, right? I mean, we're trying to improve the aesthetics in the city. So I think that what they're saying is, look, going forward, do we really want to keep introducing chain link into the city? I think, it might be a cheap solution, but I would say that, from forward-looking perspective, we should, is it the best, is that the best product that we could bring into the city?
So in other words, we want to make it harder for those with limited means to build fences. Again, I have no intention to do it myself, but I'm concerned about those who are.
I think there's a lot of reasons why we might not want chain link in the city. What do we want to do? Because we still have to go into closed session after this, and I know.
I guess what Norm's talking about, this is strictly for new houses. You're building a new house, or you're doing a complete remodel or something.
Oh, sure, that'd be fine. That would do.
That's what we're talking about, and no wood fencing. I think that is a good idea. I mean, that's another flammable thing you can remove, and why would you be adding more fuel to a bad situation that's already here?
So I think I've heard a couple of things. I mean, I haven't heard anyone. I mean, Norm might get it. Maybe but for new construction, I think we can all say we really don't want.
Absolutely, yes, because you could build a new house, you can build an expensive fence too.
Sorry, what's that?
I think the way it's.
Wait, hold on a second. Rafferty's giving us some clarification.
So I believe the intent from this is any new fencing. So whether or not it's a brand new house or something like that, anybody looking to install a fence would meet these requirements.
So what do we want to do? Do we want to give guidance? Do we want to?
I would suggest that we have them, when it comes to the chain link fences, have them focus on the new houses or major remodels. Because if they can afford to do that, they can afford to put it in a more expensive fence. We tend to forget there's a lot of people, there are a number of people in Habra Heights who are of limited means, and they are trying to do the best they can and so forth. But
so I know I got some comments about if you are going to put in chain link, you need to do screening.
Well, absolutely.
I did see that from one of the residents that said if you are going to put chain link fence in, you should put some plants to obscure it. I know the gentleman that put in the chain link up off of Canada Sombre has actually done a pretty, Rafferty knows I was calling him the minute it went up, complaining about it,
They landscaped it rather nicely with something that's going to grow into it and you won't notice it.
Right, so he did do some pretty aggressive planning. So now in several areas you can't even tell there's a chain link fence there. So, all right, what do we want to do with this?
Well, my direction would be, I have no problem with precluding cyclone fence as suggested here, but I do not feel comfortable with a 6-foot tall fence that's totally opaque to the outside. So 42 inches is fine, 18 inches of some sort of typical CMU wall with a metal cap or a wrought iron cap on the top of it so you can see through it, fine. And that's fine, that's where we are in the code at the moment.
My one concern was, and I see it's in here, that because there's a lot of different topography up here, and if you're on a large downslope, you might want to have a taller wall that would fit the location, and somebody on the road could look right over it anyway. So it's the only thing in the old language I do see that it requires a standards modification. So I guess if you wanted to have it and it fit, you could apply for it and get a standards modification through the Planning Commission. So I guess my thoughts on that is that if you know, to make that process easy for the applicant to go through the planning commission if he wanted something different than the 42 inches.
I can support that, yeah.
All right, Rafferty, do you have enough to take back? 27.
Thank you. This one's related to Safe Clean Water Measure W regional project that would be at the park. Our interim assistant city manager, Tom, will give you a little more background on it.
Thank you, Rafferty. This item has come before the City Council several times in the last couple of years, and it's back again. It's not an item that has as clear perhaps a mandate or public interest as the items you were talking about with fire just a few minutes ago. But it is one that we've had on our radar for a while now, and we wanted to give you this update. Measure W was approved about 7 years ago. It is a parcel tax that applies to properties in the county. It's separated into two programs. The municipal program, which we've been participating in for a number of years, basically addresses smaller water-related type projects, including monitoring for things like zinc, which was just mentioned, and then reporting it to the county to identify potential problems in the area. So that program we've been actively participating in, and we're on top of that. This is not the first step that we've had, though, with the regional program, but it is the most important step that's come up so far. And I want to go back to the staff report for just a second and read a little bit of that third paragraph. The Measure W regional program is intended to be used for infrastructure projects and scientific studies. The last line says, regional program funds are allocated for projects selected by the 9 watershed area steering committees in the county, proportional to the funds generated by each area. The regional program funds are appropriated by watershed area steering committees. This wasn't our project. This kind of came to the city after I think they went through the golf course and ended up here. They then decided, could we get the city to host this project at the park? So that's what we're talking about tonight. It's a $700,000 project currently that money is available for, it's appropriated for, it's waiting for us to say we want to have that money so that we can move forward with the project. This resolution that's before you tonight basically indicates to the county we're interested, we're almost committed, we're moving towards commitment on the project, and we want to be considered as real when this project is discussed. Again, it's not the first step on the regional program, but it is the key step. This shows the county again that we are committed to the project and that we're authorizing the city to receive funds which will be held by the city until we move forward with a contract with the developer of the project in a contract form that specifies the milestones, the key objectives, the timeline, and the payment schedule for the work that would be done. One other perhaps intangible is that if we pursue this project and carry it off, then we will be able to get back in line for perhaps bigger and more important projects in terms of stormwater lines or something like that, that might help some of the problems that we've experienced in the past year. This is, like I said, a large pot of funding, and if we show we can do the job, we can move forward with requests for additional funding in the future. But there are some things that need to be done. We have prepared a draft contract that needs to be reviewed by the city attorney, and we need to iron out some of the kinks in the document that we used and really set forth clearly some of the things that, some of the provisions of that contract. We need to get plans that really look like plans that are detailed and that the planning staff, Rafferty, can look at and make it a real determination and get the necessary environmental clearances to move forward. As I said, we need a clear scope of work and feel that all of that is a package that needs to be completed before we come back to you again.
So, do the funds expire?
They will expire at some point, but this particular set of funding at this point is not in jeopardy.
May I ask, I don't understand from the report, what's the benefit to the city for us to do this? Why are we doing it?
Excellent question.
Yeah.
Excellent question that has been asked previously.
Okay.
It's a water conservation demonstration project, and we get the advantage of having that project in our community. Hopefully it works. And they say it's in use in other areas of the world and has been successful. We've seen some material on that. We haven't seen a lot. We haven't seen a guarantee. There are some things that need to be, and I was just talking about this with the city attorney before the meeting started. There's a lot that we want to know that we don't have at this point. And we've been asking for material for the whole year I've been here. And the developer has not really responded to our request as most developers I've worked with in the past would respond.
My immediate concern is that we've got staff has a lot on their plate. Yeah. And quite frankly, we have some life safety issues that we have to get addressed very quickly. I just want to be respectful of staff's time and what our expectations of staff are going to be, and having another project that isn't directly related to the safety of the residents of La Habra Heights. I just don't think we should be entertaining that right now. We've got traffic signal we need to get done. We've got, I think, a significant overhaul to our brush clearance program, to our code enforcement program. I see a lot of work that has to get done in the first, couple of quarters of this year and throughout this year. I don't think any of this is going to be easy. I don't want to fool ourselves. I just don't want, my opinion is I just don't want the distraction for something that A, the funds aren't going to go anywhere, at least not immediately, and B, don't do a lot to improve the safety of the city.
I agree with that. I don't think this is a project that should be moved forward.
The question I had was, I know when we talked about this before, there was quite a few different conditions that we had discussed that we're concerned about, that Star Water had to provide that information. Have they done all that? Have they gone through all those conditions that we imposed at that time?
No. The biggest change is that we found a similar agreement, not similar, another agreement they had done in another city in California, which was a bit encouraging to see a public document that indicated they must be performing something acceptably. And that document became a draft document that I provided to the city attorney. Okay, but it still needs his blessing to make sure all the legalese is correct. But he has many other things to do, as was just indicated.
All right. Any discussion?
Well, the other thing was, this was supposed to be no cost to the city. So has Starwater put any funds forward to pay Mr. Litvin?
No.
Like I said, I think we table this. And do I have a motion?
Move to deny the resolution 2025-09.
Second?
I'll second.
I thought we're going to, rather than just outright deny it, rather, I guess, table it for now. Is there any difference whether you table it or deny it?
I don't know if the message of denial holds any different weight with the county or whoever this would be with. I mean, because in practical effect, it's the same thing, deny, table. I mean, we're not moving forward, but do you think the wording means anything to anybody?
No.
Doesn't matter. So the motion is denial on the table.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Any other conversation? I'll call for the vote. Brian?
I'll abstain.
Greg? Yes. Norm?
Yes.
Carol?
Well, I'm going to abstain too. There's stuff that's gone in the background and
Okay, and I'll say yes. All right, item 28.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. As we all remember, last year we were in this room talking about a very different subject. It was severe winter storms we had in February of 2024. As part of that, there was debris that was accumulated on the city's property at West and Hacienda from those storms. We've been going through a long process with FEMA to gain all the appropriate approvals to be able to remove the debris that's been staged on West and Hacienda. We have all those clearances today and are ready to move forward with removing all the debris that's at the West and Hacienda property. Staff put out out to bid the services to remove that from the property. There were 4 contractors who bid on the particular project. Those costs range from just under $120,000 down to just under $80,000 for that one. So the low bidder for this one would be California Arborist Complete Tree Care. They would be responsible for removing the dirt off of the property and disposing of the debris at an approved landfill site that will accept it in that one. So we have been working with FEMA, as I said, and we have built this cost into our recovery efforts to it. So it is already slated in the amounts of monies that we have put in for the reimbursements for FEMA, because we already knew dollar amounts that we'd be potentially looking at. So we pre-placed that in there. Once this is executed, it will be a reimbursable cost for us from that one. So the recommendation is to authorize the finance manager to amend the 2024-25 budget to increase account 101-450 PWD 6850 by $79,245 for the removal of dirt and debris from Hacienda West vacant lot. Authorize a contingency in the amount of $11,886.75 or 15%. Authorize the finance manager to amend the budget and increase it for the 15% contingency. Authorize the city manager to approve the purchase order per the city's purchasing policy, and authorize staff to schedule the work with California Arborist Complete Tree Care Incorporated to complete the work on the property. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions?
Just kind of a question, it's kind of ancillary, but out of curiosity, if that lot were not available when the floods occurred and so forth, where would we put the debris? And how much more would it have cost us, roughly?
We potentially could have taken that stuff to landfill right away. Obviously, being wet, the water weight of it would have affected the tonnage reporting. So the amount of money it may have cost at that time would probably be more than it is today, just because all the water weight in there would increase the tonnage.
And then, of course, it would take longer between trips, of course. So it was fortunate we were able to put it there. Not that it looks good, but in an emergency situation, that was fortunate. Thank you.
Any other comments? We have a motion?
I'm sorry, Carol,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Move to approve the recommendation of the City Council made in the staff report. I'm not going to read it back, but it's on the second page of this item.
Second?
Second.
Brian?
Yes.
Greg? Norm?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
I'm yes. 29, 2024 winter storms update.
So, like I was saying previously, we've been working very closely with FEMA, and we have recently finalized all of our stuff into the system for reimbursements. A little over $600,000 in reimbursement costs have been submitted to FEMA, and now are working through that approval system. We actually receive reimbursements through the state, State Cal OES. FEMA provides that money to the state, and the state provides the reimbursements. We have completed that first step in that process. Now it is working with FEMA and the state on making sure all the information they needed and or requested that we put it in the system are in the system, and then we should be getting reimbursements for all of the expenditures related to that. We have also finalized some documentation with the FEMA inspectors related to damage assessments and future mitigation works that we can do. That report is being finalized and will be moved through that FEMA system as well. So good progress being made on there. We had a very great team from FEMA that helped us through that process. It's very complicated, very arduous, lots of back and forth, but we did. Neftali was our primary FEMA representatives and did a great job with us. Unfortunately, FEMA is shuffling people around, so we now have a new person who will be representing us as he's moved on to a different area. So that new representative just came on board and is getting up to speed on all that stuff as we complete the process with the state.
Questions?
Assuming the president doesn't freeze all the money, do you have like an estimate when we might receive anything?
They were saying potentially about May would be the time frame for reimbursements. If they're barring no, there has been some communications from FEMA related to restraining orders and other things related to funding.
Any other questions? All right, 30.
30 is a follow-up to Equestrian Park Equestrian access trail at the intersection of East and Hacienda. We had a resident who had volunteered to do some work for us. It takes a plan for council to be able to approve for it. Another resident has stepped up to actually prepare those plans free of charge for us. We just don't have it in hand yet, but we wanted to, council members Azula wanted to make sure to try to get it on just in case something came available by the meeting date. We could approve it. As soon as we have it in hand, we'll make sure to get it to council.
So this will be a standing item then until it gets approved?
We'll keep it a standing item until we're...
Hopefully a very short standing item.
Okay. No, I just
Yes, absolutely,
I
yes.
completely support it, so let's keep it on there. Any questions?
Is there a
Please.
reason you don't put their names down?
We will name the trail after them as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
They did the work, they ought
We'll make
to
sure
deserve the
we-
credit.
They should get some credit.
Well, we can do a little thank you when we get it done.
I thought the rule was you had to be dead before you put your name on anything. So I'm not sure they're agreeable to the stipulation.
I don't know that our politicians would like that very much. There's
Well, that's
plaques with politicians' names on them. All right.
Well, definitely not
Any
politicians,
other
but the
questions?
guys who did the work deserve the credit. And that meaning the two individuals we're talking about.
Right, Given
Anyway, thank
given
you.
the hour, and we still have closed session after this, I'll move us along. 31?
If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer for you.
Yeah. 31?
If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you.
Got it. Thank you. I thought it was for 30. All right, any questions? I did see a lot of excitement when the boards went up about the signal. So a lot of people were excited about the boards going up. However, the boards went up a couple weeks ago, and I still have not seen any work on that street corner.
The boards have come down again. We started the initial process with the county related to the inspection process of it. There's been some questions asked from them. They previously did not require a traffic control plan for the work happening at the intersection. The inspectors that will be doing the inspection on the county side have requested a traffic control plan. So we have demobilized the boards until the county approves the traffic control plan. We're checking daily to see when that may come. And then once we have that approved, then boards will go back out and we have the notifications that will go out to the neighbors.
What do we think the delay is? Because traffic control, I can't believe that's a very lengthy delay. That should only be a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's our hope is, like, we were hoping to have the plan in hand to have it to the county by the end of the week.
Any questions on any of the other projects? All right. Moving on, 32, any council member comments about items and/or meeting attendance?
This is the second time in my life I've spent my birthday at a council meeting.
Happy birthday, Carol.
Happy birthday.
You would have let us know earlier. We could have had the Boy Scouts sing you
I
happy
know.
birthday.
As my birthday gift to you, I'll spare you the my singing of your birthday.
Although, Brian, I will have words about you not spilling the beans earlier. 33, I do have one speaker card from Ray about, I guess, items not on the agenda, but I think you want to talk about an item that was on the agenda. So I will, I think
Yes,
we
Mr.
can
Mayor.
allow that to happen.
Perhaps I should have spoken on items 25 and 26, but 3 minutes was not enough time to speak on two. So, as a Planning Commission chairman, I led the discussion on items 25 and 26. And I wanted to give you a quick background.
So Ray, take your time. You're not limited to 3 minutes, so as much time as you need.
I can slow down a little bit. You give me 2 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. On the screening, we have a lot of common sense on the Planning Commission. I think we have a really good group of people. We have an attorney. Chairman Steffler, you appointed an engineer. He seems like a very sharp guy. We have Stephen Blagden back on the commission. So we have a good group of people, and we have a lot of common sense. And we're thinking, why would anybody buy a view lot and pay big bucks for it and then be required to screen 50% of your view? That makes no sense. So our thinking as a group was, let's let the people on their primary view relax that part of the screening requirement, okay? That's our thinking. As far as the walls, Chairman Steffler, you don't think a 6-foot wall should be allowed in the front yard. And what's going on, a lot of people are worried about their security. You may see the news, all the crime. We've had home invasion robberies in La Habra Heights. And then, so people want security, they want privacy. If you require the people to put wrought iron fence above 42 inches, it's just a handhold for somebody just to shimmy up the wall. And we realize that some people may not want a solid wall, but it would have to be a stuccoed wall with landscape screening in front of it. And many of you have gone by my house. I have a solid wall, and I've screened it with a vine that in the spring is full of beautiful flowers, and it looks pretty good. And also, the commission didn't feel that chain link was an appropriate fencing for the front yard. Even though now it's allowed if you screen it, but you can go all over the city and people put up chain link fences. We have one that just was put up on East Road near my house, and there's no screening on it. So it just doesn't look good. And I just don't think a chain link fence adds value to the neighborhood. So that's just a little background of why we sent that recommendation to you as a city council, and we'll certainly review it again and talk about it some more. We've talked about it now for months, right, Rafferty? And we'd like to really kind of put this issue to rest. So we hope you support our solid wall now that you know the reasons why. And that's it. And thank you for what you do on the council. I know it's not easy. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for sticking around, Ray. All right, so we have closed session, so I will adjourn to closed session. Is that the proper?
Yep, we'll adjourn to closed session. I technically have to read what it is for public disclosure, and the items are existing litigation, our HCD case, and we have one case of anticipated litigation, and then we have personnel employment regarding interim assistant city manager. And that is all.
Thank you, sir. Todd?
I appreciated the excitement that you put into it. It made it sound so important. I think I handed it to you at a council meeting. It's in your briefcase. But I can get you another. Not the briefcase.
I got to get into closed session. I know. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was more than I wanted, but there was a lot of stuff we had put off in January. So I know we're really gonna have to figure out how we're gonna deal with
transfer into the fire fund?
So we met in closed session. There's no reportable action. Meeting adjourned. We're good.